Welcome aboard to podcast 34 in the series of the Voyage to Back Yonder. As we sit in the sun on the deck of our ship, we feel relaxed sailing along on the sea. We drift into a light sleep and begin to dream. But are we dreaming? Or is this the dream we're living when our physical eyes are open? If you've been along with me on my journey with my other podcast series, Coming Back from Fear and Superpower and Who Let the Master Out, then you know of some of the stories I've shared about experiences I've had with the supernatural. My mind struggles with comprehending that the supernatural is not pretend. It focuses on what it's been told and what it can see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. It tries to dismiss the supernatural as coincidence. And how do I know it's not coincidence? How would I be able to prove it to myself that it's not? Maybe by remembering the expanse of my experiences. If I document everything, or as much as is reasonably possible, of course, then I could point my brain to this as evidence. Maybe. And as I sit and try to recall my earliest memory of something supernatural, I recall being on a school playground in first grade. Little boys were picking on a little girl, but I felt her extreme emotional distress and fear as if it were my own. And then I remember later in elementary school, we visited a nursing home, like as a school event. A group of us were brought into a room where there's a sweet lady. And she was mentioning that she told us she could know things about other people. And I was hanging out in the back of the group, but she pointed to me and, told me to come to her. So I did. And when I did, she grabbed my hand and held onto it tight. And she told me that I also had the same gift as her. And I had totally forgot about that experience until I started to try to remember anything possibly supernatural from my childhood that stood out to me. So sometimes there's these buried memories that come up later. And the more I journal about each experience I remember and new experiences that I have, the more evidence I submit to my fear, ego, judge, and brain. So many things have happened that can't be explained away. And my internal jury starts swaying to a truth that the supernatural is indeed real. And it's not just a made-up story or a hope that there's something more. As we let fear subside and let unconditional love fill us up, we can begin to see that there is indeed more. The invisible realm might rattle our cage to make us aware that they exist. I had an experience that I've talked about a few times where I was visiting a friend in a city hours away from where I lived. We unexpectedly went to a Pentecostal church on a Wednesday night service with her family. It was a nice service with a sermon on love. And I hadn't told anyone about the deep conversation I had with the curator the night before I left on my trip. But there, in front of a congregation of strangers I had never met, this pastor shook with the surge of the Holy Spirit. And even though we were sitting almost at the very back of the pews, he pointed me out from the crowd. And he asked what the name of that young man back in the corner was, and then proceeded to communicate a message to me from the Creator. And he answered several of the questions I had specifically asked in that deep conversation the night before I left. And that would be one of the major centerpieces of my belief that the supernatural exists. I mean, my mind cannot dispute that it happened. There's no possible way for anyone to have known what I had asked of the Creator that night because I hadn't told anyone about it at all. But it just flowed out of his mouth over the microphone right there in front of me. And there it was. When there's no logical reason for something to happen, and it does, it creates the space of endless possibilities in our head. It also kind of scares the crap out of us a little. We think we figure out life and we have it down, and then a curveball comes and we start to question, what is truth and what is real? And it doesn't have to be a huge event like that either. I mean, I've had tons of small things happen over and over and over again that make an equal impact on me. And because of the number of times these things have happened, I realize it's not a fluke. Whether it's knowing details about someone's life that I shouldn't have known or could have known, or even knowing what the 3-number combination to a briefcase was, these things start to stand out. An example is one of my most recent situations that just happened this week was that I received a phone call from a friend who I maybe talk with on the phone once a year, if that. And when I asked her, hey, what spawned, you calling me? She said that it was something her pastor had said at church during his sermon that morning. And he had mentioned, everything we need to be happy is within us. I'm like, nice. After we finished up our conversation, I started to watch the movie The Nutcracker and the Four Realms on Netflix. And in the beginning of that movie, the little girl receives a letter from her mother, who's passed to the other side, that says, everything you need is inside. Whoa. So, these messages are very clear if we look for them, if we're aware of them. And sometimes others might comment about something when they're with you. So last year, when I was out running errands with my mom, she mentioned that she needed new windshield wipers. So we bought them, and when we got back to her place, we chatted for a little bit, and I suddenly felt the urge to, let's go try to replace your windshield wipers. And I've never replaced them on her vehicle before. They're a little bit different than the ones I had dealt with. So as I started to try to figure it out, and we were standing at her car that was parked in her, designated apartment parking space, a woman's voice from behind us asked if we needed help. Well, this angel had worked at a car parts place, and I handed her the new windshield wipers, and within literally 2 minutes, she had them both replaced. And I remember this because my mom, just the look on her face, she was just shocked at what had just happened. It was an amazing experience of having something happen that may appear coincidental. But as we expand our belief that it was a message, that there is more out there, more comes to us. Our awareness expands. And it's wonderful that when we start to share what experiences we've had with the supernatural, others also speak up about what has happened to them. And we sometimes fear that others will think we're crazy if we share our stories of what happened with them. But when we take a deep breath and take that chance, we just might find that most everyone has had many things happen in their own lives. We have a large group of unconditionally loving souls and angels on the other side. And of course, the big kahuna. And they're all constantly whispering to us about the love they have for us. And they also like to send messages through people, things, and situations to let us know that they are there. And as we become more aware that they exist, we might see less coincidence and more miracles. Until next episode, take some deep breaths. I cannot prove to you that the supernatural is not coincidence and that it's real. That can only happen within you. I mean, I can't control your choices or your perceptions. That's all up to you. That's your voyage. What I can do is offer up an idea. Take some quiet time to think about the miracles, the supernatural experiences, the messages you've received in your lifetime from the Creator, your angels, or the loved ones who have returned home. What's your earliest memory of something happening? What's the most recent? What's happened in between those? I encourage you to write them down, reflect on them, be aware of what whispers of love are being presented to you in this moment. They're here with us now. They're smiling and giving us love. And they're plotting many more ways to show us that indeed the supernatural is real. If not more real than what we've been taught reality is. There's always more. Enjoy your voyage, Captain. I love you.